You have to step back and look at all the pieces of a very big puzzle. Take our dollar. It's lost 96% of its value since 1913. The Australian dollar, it's fallen 99% over that same period. The Canadian dollar, down 95%. The British pound, off 99%. Warren Buffett recently stated the obvious about all of this. He publicly said people are right to fear paper money, that it's only going to be worth less and less over time. These currencies are dying right in front of us. None of us are blind to what's going on.
So the government's idea right now is we're going to export our way out of this. And when I asked a senior member of the Obama administration last week, how are we going to grow exports if we won't allow nominal wage deflation? And he says, we're just going to kill the dollar. And I said, okay, more you mean. So that's the only answer. And
that's a dead answer.
It's a dead answer, but that's where we're headed.
Some might be surprised to learn that the fate of America's economy has already been determined, verified, and announced by the Obama White House. Yet, it has received scant attention from the corporate media. In 2011, economist Kyle Bass interviewed a senior member of the Obama administration about its planned solutions for fixing the U.S. economy and trade deficit. Among the questions he asked was about the U.S. exports and wages. But the question itself was not nearly as important as the response he received from this senior administration official. In fact, this single 7-word response clarifies everything, explains everything, and leaves little else to discuss. We're just going to kill the dollar.
In 1921, Thomas Edison developed a plan to reinvent the one force that drives everything: money. I'm Mike Ward, and this is a story you've never been told. In 1921, Thomas Edison tried to reinvent the dollar. Now, while the U.S. government and the Federal Reserve initially silenced Edison's radical plan, it could only stay hidden for so long. Over the years, an underground movement championed this monetary breakthrough, and recently its existence was brought to light. It sparked a rebellion that quickly spread to Main Street America, to every corner of the globe. Right now, this radical new form of money is being used by millions of people in over 100 countries. It's trading on exchanges around the world, from Toronto to Singapore to the United States. Edison's revenge on the dollar is beginning to rebalance the existing power structures, dictating who can become wealthy in America. It's why the U.S. Department of Justice calls it a renegade currency, why the European Central Bank fears it will negatively impact their reputation, why a senior economic advisor to President Reagan calls it a competitive threat to all currencies, and why the IRS is sounding the alarms that this may be the ultimate 21st century tax haven.
You know, Mike, this is a really fascinating piece of economic history in the United States. It all started back in 1921. Now, back then, we were in the middle of one of the worst depressions in U.S. history. Remember, this predates the Great Depression, but it was a big one. It was a scary time in America. Our GDP just dropped like a rock. This would be the same as losing $1 trillion of our economic value today, gone in the blink of an eye, in 18 months. Then, our dollar plunged by over 17%. It just dropped right off a cliff. So Thomas Edison blames all of this chaos on the Federal Reserve. And you know, he was right. He believed that even though we had a gold-backed dollar, the Fed still had far too much power to manipulate our money supply and our economy. And what the Fed really wanted was a single currency based on paper, really based on nothing more than mortgage loans. Those were his exact words.
It sounds like Thomas Edison hit the nail on the head here because, look, that's exactly what our dollar has been built on for years now. That's exactly what caused our 2008 recession, our financial crisis. Edison saw it coming.
Without question, Mike, Edison's solution was to weaken the Fed's power. Now, how do you weaken an institution with centralized power? Simple. You decentralize it. So as an inventor, Edison does what inventors do. He sits down and invents what became known as Edison dollars, a free market-driven dollar. He engineered his money to be decentralized across 36 commodities, decentralized across 12 warehouses. There would be 6 in the cotton states and 6 in the wheat states. And the only way new money could be created would be if new commodities were added to those warehouses. So Edison takes his plan to the governor of the Fed, the New York Fed. He goes to the heads of the national banks. Mike, guess what? They all united against him. They buried Edison's plan before he could ever get it started. In fact, only one copy of Edison's plan ever made it out to the public.
So how was Edison's vision kept alive all these years?
You know, it's a very strange thing, Mike. You had to follow a trail of breadcrumbs. Edison dollars were highly championed by none other than Henry Ford. So a free market capitalist gets behind a free market dollar, and the trail starts. Edison to Ford. Then it takes a new turn, and it leads to Irving Fisher. Fisher was a famous economist who believed that the money supply should increase along a fixed set of rules, no Fed intervention. He was a major supporter of Edison dollars. Now then, it leads to Fisher's big protege. Almost everyone has heard of this guy, John Maynard Keynes. In 1944, at the Bretton Woods meetings, Keynes proposes his own commodity-backed currency. He called it Bancor. And here's the difference. This is extremely important. Edison wanted to overhaul the U.S. dollar. Keynes had a bigger idea. He wanted to overhaul all currencies. Now we have to follow those breadcrumbs again. Nobel Prize winning economist Milton Friedman enters the scene.
You interviewed Milton Friedman years back. He discussed the role you found he played in this evolution of Edison's new money.
That's correct, Mike. Dr. Friedman and I were talking at his condo in San Francisco. His wife was with him. You know, they're great people. So we're having this incredible conversation. At one point, he turns to me and he says, point blank, Michael, we don't need the Fed. Just replace it with a computer. He wanted his computer to print those dollars on a set schedule, month after month, week after week, year after year, like clockwork. The same number of dollars are printed, no more, no less. Edison dollars were low-tech. Friedman fixed that.
From Edison to Ford to Fisher to Keynes to Friedman, they kept upgrading the original vision. But in 2009, we hit a point where the economic conditions were just right for a 21st century version of Edison dollars to appear.
Mike, what emerged was a perfect version of Edison dollars. Backed by multiple commodities, free market driven, and inflation proof, the money supply is controlled. Same amount printed on a set schedule. It cannot be manipulated, Mike, by any central banker or any government because it eliminates not only the Fed's centralized power, but that of all central banks. The only way to make all of this possible was for Edison's dollars to be reborn as high-tech, a digital currency, one created to act just like virtual gold, but also backed by an even more powerful commodity, and that, Mike, is energy. Every day, so much energy is allocated into maintaining this virtual currency. It could power 31,000 American homes. And its network isn't 12 decentralized warehouses across America. These modern Edison dollars are stored in a decentralized network of millions upon millions of computers located all over the world. In fact, if you took the top 500 supercomputers on this planet, put them all together, combine them in one giant network, this virtual currencies network would be 8 times stronger than that. And the movement is spreading at light speed. We just saw a 1,500% increase, 1,500% increase, I'm telling you, in trading activity in US dollars, in euros, you name it. And that's only in 3 months, Mike. These modern Edison dollars have now surpassed the total value of 20 national currencies. When have you ever heard of something that big growing that fast? Mike, these are 21st century Edison dollars. I'm talking about Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the realization of Thomas Edison's dream come true.
Now, Michael, a lot of folks have heard of Bitcoin, and it's unleashed a firestorm in the press. Now, I want to read some of these quotes for you now. Forbes, Bitcoin, the currency of a $10 trillion global market. Time magazine, this concept is perfect money. Fox Business, Bitcoin may become the world's payment method of choice. The Washington Post quoted experts calling Bitcoin the Holy Grail. Astonishingly secure, anonymous, invisible to the taxman. It could soon rival the dollar. And it's not just the press supporting Bitcoin. Ron Paul said dollar alternatives like Bitcoin are fantastic. They offer freedom of choice. They're commodities that offer better value than what the Fed is printing. The VP of PayPal, Bitcoin, the perfect currency by design. Bill Gates, it's a techno tour de force. Now, this one is especially intriguing, and get this. The CEO of Google, Eric Schmidt, he had the secret meeting in the UK. He was there with the vice president of the Council on Foreign Relations and a former advisor to the Secretary of State. They were talking about how Bitcoin helps overcome problems people have with central banks. Bitcoin operates like gold mining, and that Bitcoin is going to be worth a lot of money.